Ever notice how some celebrity interviews,
Oh,
they kind of catch you off guard? You go in expecting the usual, the polished stories, the perfect sound bites.
right.
But then, every now and then, you get this raw, unexpected honesty
Yeah.
that just pulls you in.
hmm
And that's what I felt reading Hayden Panettiere's latest interview.
It's true. You think you know what to expect going in, and then it's
Yeah.
like this wave of realness, really, about profound loss,
Yeah.
the surprising ways grief can impact you physically, and this winding journey to finding strength.
It's like she totally skipped the PR script and just went straight from the heart, you know? And
Yeah.
she does not hold back, especially when she's talking about the loss of her brother. She said, I felt like I lost half of my soul.
Hmm.
I mean, wow.
That image is so powerful, and I think it gets to the core of how deep that sibling bond was. And what I find interesting is that she doesn't try to sugarcoat the experience at all. She goes on to say, "Don't ever expect me to get over it."
Yeah.
And I think that really challenges this assumption that grief has a neat and tidy timeline.
It makes you realize that sometimes it's not even about getting over it, right? It's
Yeah.
more about learning to kind of live with that absence.
Exactly. And you see that evolving perspective, I think, in the interview. She talks about learning to pick your battles after experiencing such a significant loss. It's like her whole worldview shifted,
Right.
and she's reevaluating what truly matters.
And here's where it gets, I think, really eye-opening.
Hmm.
She starts talking about how after her brother's death, she experienced significant weight gain, and she directly connects it to her grief.
Right.
It made me stop and think about, like, how deeply grief can impact us physically
Yeah.
in ways we don't always talk about.
This is such a clear example of that mind-body connection. We often separate emotional distress from our physical selves, but the reality is they're totally intertwined.
Yeah.
When we experience intense stress or trauma, like Hayden did, our bodies respond, and sometimes in really unpredictable ways.
It's like our body is trying to process this massive emotional weight, literally.
Exactly. And in Hayden's case, it manifested as weight gain, which, as she reveals, was directly influenced by heightened levels of cortisol, that stress hormone we hear about.
Right.
But the broader takeaway here, and I think this is crucial, is that grief's impact extends far beyond just the emotional. It can show up physically, mentally, even behaviorally, and often in ways that we don't expect.
And that's what makes her story so powerful. She's not just sharing the emotional landscape of grief, but she's revealing its often hidden physical impact.
Right. And that's where I think Hayden's journey takes a really interesting turn. Faced with this, unexpected physical manifestation of grief, she finds solace and strength in a kind of unlikely place. Her trainer, Marnie.
Okay, so tell me more about Marnie. What is it about her approach that's so different?
Well, it's really clear from the interview that Marnie's much more than just a fitness coach to Hayden.
Right.
She describes her as a friend, a life coach, someone she can be completely vulnerable with.
Yeah, it's that vital reminder that sometimes, the most powerful healing comes from human connection.
That's
From finding those people who truly get it, who've been there.
And what's so fascinating about Marnie's approach, and I think what really resonated with Hayden, is this emphasis on empowerment, not punishment.
Okay.
There's this part where Hayden mentions Marnie saying to her, "You can do this for you."
Yeah.
That's such a powerful shift,
Totally.
moving away from that self-criticism and towards self-compassion,
Right.
especially during a time of such intense grief.
It's that whole thing of being on your own team even when, like, it feels impossible.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that message really got through to Hayden.
It did, and it speaks to, I think, this broader point about the kind of support systems that we surround ourselves with. Marnie's approach highlights the importance of finding those safe spaces and people who uplift and encourage us, who help us tap into our own inner strength,
Right.
rather than focusing on perceived flaws or shortcomings.
It's like having that supportive voice reminding you that you're capable
Yeah.
even amidst all the chaos of grief.
Precisely. And sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes that's the kind of support that makes all the difference in navigating those really difficult journeys.
It's so true. We all need those cheerleaders in our lives. But you know what else struck me about this interview? She talks about her daughter, Kaya, with such genuine joy, even amidst all the heaviness she's discussing. There's this, like, lightness that just shines through when she speaks about her daughter. It's like Kaya, her daughter, is this little bright spark, even in the midst of all of this, this profound loss.
Yeah.
And Kaya sounds like quite the character. I love that anecdote that Hayden shared about how during her daughter's school play, her daughter Kaya was way more concerned about her classmates' like dance moves
Yeah, yeah.
than she was about her own.
That's hilarious. It sounds like Hayden might be raising a future director or something, always keeping an eye on the bigger picture, right? But you're right. That anecdote, I think, really beautifully illustrates that even amidst grief, that joy can still find its way in.
Absolutely. And for Hayden, it seems like parenthood is a huge source of that joy. It's also really fascinating to me that she's choosing to share her story now in an even bigger way by writing her autobiography, which, I think that's a really powerful statement.
Yeah, totally.
To be willing to take control of your own narrative like that. Yeah. Especially after experiencing such a public loss,
Absolutely. And it speaks to, I think, her strength and her resilience for sure, but also this desire to, I think, connect with other people who might be going through something similar, to let them know that they're not alone.
It's like she's like turning her pain into purpose.
Yeah.
Which is just, it's incredibly inspiring.
It is, and it brings us back to this theme of vulnerability that we've been talking about this whole interview. I mean, from her candidness about grief to her openness about the physical and the emotional challenges, it really showcases the power of embracing authenticity, even when it's messy, even when it's hard.
She's not hiding behind like those perfectly crafted sound bites.
Oh, right.
She's really letting us see the real her. Flaws and all.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in a world that's so obsessed with presenting, this picture perfect facade, that kind of authenticity, it's so refreshing. It reminds us that vulnerability, it's not weakness. It's actually a source of incredible strength.
It really makes you wonder where we could all benefit from embracing a little more vulnerability in our own lives.
Yeah. Absolutely. Maybe it's in our relationships or our creative endeavors or even just in those quiet moments of self-reflection. But I think Hayden Panettiere's story is a really powerful reminder that true strength lies in embracing our whole selves, imperfections and all.
It really is. Well said. And on that note, that's a wrap on our deep dive.